Hello, hello, everyone. We are back at Win Win Situation. I am Tony Win, and today we're going to talk about communication, primarily sign language. And today I've got two guests on the show from the Associates in Sign Language, which was founded in 2005 by Cindy Lear and Rebecca Blitch. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Tony.
you for having us.
Absolutely. Can you guys tell me a little bit of the origins of ASL?
Sure, I'll start. Um, in 2004, Rebecca and I had both moved here from other places, and we were surprised that there was not a service that existed in Springfield where a company that needed a sign language interpreter could contact one phone number and be able to secure a sign language interpreter. For example, if a hospital wanted to call, they would have to go down a list of about 20 different interpreters, calling each person to see if they would be available for a Wednesday at 10 o'clock appointment. And so the two of us decided that we would strike out on this journey, and are surprised after 16 years that we are still going strong and moving forward, and have gone from just the two of us interpreting, which is how it started, to about 25 people, 25 to 30 people at any given time that work for us in our regional area.
Gotcha. And so, what are your individual roles,
Um, as founders of the company, we initially did everything,
Lynn?
from answering the phone to scheduling to going and interpreting, to securing then other interpreters, to getting out and developing new customer relationships with hospitals, schools, entertainment places in Branson, all the way from Springfield to our state lines, either direction. So we, over time, added new interpreters that we brought on with us. And eventually we were able to hire someone to do the full-time answering the phone and scheduling.
Great. So I understand there's different sign languages. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I notice it's the American Sign Language, and there's the British, and all these other ones. What's the difference? How does that work?
Right. So that's something that people might misunderstand, or that's a myth that sign language is universal. It's not. So typically each country has their own signed language. There is international sign language, which is something that you learn to do so that when you go to another country, you can still communicate, but it's not purely American Sign Language or purely their sign language. It's a mix and an international language that people use. We also have regional differences within the United States as well. So people who live out west sign some things differently than we do here. So those things are all things you try to keep up on and learn and keep up with your continuing education to stay abreast of the changes and the regional differences.
Gotcha. So, in terms of, are there similarities then between all the different languages, or is it just like any spoken language? I suppose that some have similarities and some are completely different in terms of communication and
It's
vocabulary.
probably both. So there will be some things that you can figure out, but there will be some that are totally different and you'll have no clue what it is. So yeah, a little bit of both.
I like to use the example of I think it's in Chinese Sign Language, you have hello like this,
Mm-hmm.
hello, and we say hello like this.
Oh.
And I think it's kind of cute. It looks like two people kind of bowing, hello.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't know many signs in other languages, but it's just one example.
Yeah, great. So, in terms of becoming an interpreter, and for yourselves in hiring an interpreter, like what kind of traits do you look for, or what are the prereqs to be an interpreter?
Well, first, I think you have to look at whether someone has the skill level, and we are looking for people that have a license in the state of Missouri, and people that are also certified in the state of Missouri, which means that they have met qualifications that the state has put out that allows them to have the certification and a licensure. So that's very important for our company. And so once you find out that a person is skilled, then we want to be able to make sure that they are very professional in their clothing, in showing up on time, being very reliable, and that they have a certain level of flexibility. The services that we provide encompass a real wide variety of situations, from court situations to medical situations and entertainment situations. So a person has to be able to be very flexible in their language and in their skill level to be able to meet the demands not only of the situation, but also the given language of the person. So you might have a deaf person who is a PhD level person, or even a physician that is deaf and uses sign language, and you may have someone who has cognitive difficulties. And so an interpreter has to be able to match any given person's communication needs, but also match any given person who's a hearing person, is what deaf people call us. They have to be able to match that person's communication level. So it's a little bit more complicated, I think, than what it seems.
Sure, yeah. In terms of, I suppose your clients or your customers, like who are who's hiring you? Because I mean, I obviously have seen interpreters in terms of like press meetings and things like that. Who else are you guys working with?
I would say that we have about 150 customers or more, and that's just about at any given time. So they're people that maybe have an employee that is deaf, and they're having staff meetings, and they would hire an interpreter to come in maybe for their monthly staff meetings. Or they have a person who shows up, a hospital has somebody who shows up in an emergency room, and so we would obviously be called by the hospital and be paid for by the hospital. The Americans with Disabilities Act specifically gave guidance to companies that they were responsible to provide access and communication. And so it then behooves the company or hospital or whomever to hire the interpreter. It's not the deaf person who's hiring the interpreter.
Gotcha. Rebecca, what's your opinion on how important is communication?
Well, I guess I would put it like this. Imagine you went to another country and got very sick and had to go to the hospital, and you didn't speak their language. How important would it be to you? I mean, that's kind of how it is for deaf people every day. I think another myth about interpreting in sign language is that deaf people should be able to read our lips. But only 30% of the English language is visible on the lips. The rest of it's further back in our anatomy, and so it's impossible to see. And so it's vitally important. And we're there for both parties, the hearing person, the provider, and the deaf person equally as much. And so that doctor wants to provide the best care. That's their oath that they took. And the deaf person definitely wants to be able to express themselves completely. And so that's why it's so important for us to be there.